They called him broken. They hid him from the world. They expected him to die forgotten. But the man history tried to erase would one day command the greatest empire on earth, not with strength, not with beauty, but with survival. This is the story Rome never wanted remembered. Imagine being born into royalty and treated like a mistake. This was the life of Claudius. He was born into the Julio-Claudian dynasty, Rome's most powerful family. His uncle was the emperor, Tiberius. His brother was the celebrated general, Germanicus, a hero to the Roman people. By all accounts, Claudius should have been destined for greatness, but Claudius was different. He had a pronounced stammer that made public speaking a struggle. His legs were weak, causing him to limp. His hands often shook uncontrollably. In the unforgiving culture of ancient Rome, where physical perfection was linked to strength and leadership, any perceived weakness was a source of deep shame. It was a sign that the gods did not favor you. So his own family, the most powerful people in the world, hid him away. He was barred from public life. No grand speeches in the Forum, no military training alongside other young nobles, no path to a political future. They essentially erased him from the public eye. Even his own mother, Antonia, was reported to have said, "He is a man nature never finished." To the mighty Roman Empire, Claudius was seen as useless, an embarrassment. He was invisible. But in the treacherous world of Roman politics, being ignored was a blessing in disguise. In Rome, power made you a target. Weakness, on the other hand, made you invisible. And invisibility was the ultimate form of protection. While Claudius was being mocked and dismissed in the quiet corners of the imperial palace, the powerful figures around him were falling one by one. His brother, the beloved Germanicus, died under mysterious circumstances, likely poisoned. Princes who were seen as heirs to the throne were executed on trumped-up charges. Powerful nobles and senators who posed even the slightest threat were betrayed and eliminated. The imperial palace wasn't a home. It became a killing ground, a snake pit where ambition was a death sentence. And Claudius? No one feared him. No one saw him as a rival. He was just the stammering, limping fool who spent his days with books and scholars, so no one bothered to kill him. He lived quietly, studying history and law, while the giants of his generation fell all around him. He learned a crucial lesson not from a tutor, but from survival itself. The quietest person in the room is often the one who lives to see the next day. His supposed weaknesses became his greatest shield, allowing him to observe, to listen, and to learn, all while remaining completely underestimated. Then the worst ruler in Rome's history, his own nephew, took the throne. Caligula. His name has become synonymous with cruelty, instability, and sheer madness. As emperor, Caligula unleashed a reign of terror. He humiliated powerful senators, forcing them to run alongside his chariot for miles. He executed close friends and allies on a whim. He terrorized the city, his actions growing more erratic and violent with each passing day. He famously declared his horse a consul, a move that showed his utter contempt for the traditions and institutions of Rome. For Claudius, this was the most dangerous time of his life. He survived only by amplifying the role everyone had already assigned him, the harmless, bumbling idiot. He played the part perfectly. He would laugh along when Caligula made him the butt of a cruel joke. He lowered his eyes, never making contact, showing utter submission. He stayed silent, a ghost in the halls of power. Every day was a tightrope walk over a pit of fire. Every word spoken, every glance exchanged was fraught with danger. He was living at the mercy of a monster. Then, in one single night, the monster fell. The Praetorian Guard, the emperor's own bodyguards, had finally had enough. They cornered Caligula in a palace corridor and assassinated him, along with his wife and daughter. The palace instantly erupted into chaos. The sounds of screaming echoed through the marble halls. Blood stained the floors. The heavy footsteps of soldiers pounded through the corridors, searching for any remaining members of Caligula's family, any potential rivals or avengers. It was a coup. Claudius, hearing the commotion, knew he was a target simply by blood. He ran, terrified. He found a hiding spot behind a heavy curtain in a deserted wing of the palace. He stood there, shaking, listening to the sounds of murder and revolution, certain that he would be next. He expected death. They gave him the world. A soldier, searching the palace for stragglers, pulled back the heavy curtain. He found Claudius cowering in the corner. For a moment they stared at each other. This was it, the end. Claudius fell to his knees, begging for his life, but the soldier didn't draw his sword. Instead, a look of recognition, of opportunity, dawned on his face. He and his fellow guards recognized Claudius. He was the last adult male of the imperial family. The guards, fearing the Senate would try to restore the Republic and disband them, needed an emperor. And right here was one ready-made. Instead of killing him, the soldiers raised him up. They hailed him as their leader. They declared him Imperator, Emperor of Rome. At 50 years old, the forgotten man, the family reject, was suddenly the most powerful person in the known world. Rome laughed at its new emperor. The idea was preposterous. The Senate, which had hoped to regain power, was furious and humiliated. The nobles whispered in the corridors, their mockery barely concealed. "He's weak," they said. "He's broken. He won't last a month." Many immediately began plotting to replace him. Some ambitious generals even prepared for civil war, assuming the empire was now rudderless and ripe for the taking. The entire Roman world held its breath, expecting chaos, expecting the empire to collapse under the rule of a man they considered a fool. But Claudius had been watching, quietly, for decades. He wasn't a fool. He was a student of history, and power who had been given a 50-year-long lesson in how not to rule. He knew the mistakes his predecessors had made. His first move was brilliant. He knew his power came from the army, so he strengthened their loyalty immediately, paying the Praetorian Guard a massive bonus and securing their allegiance. He then turned his attention to the people, ensuring the grain supply to Rome was stable and protecting common citizens from exploitation. He personally presided over the courts, shocking everyone with his sharp legal mind as he reformed corrupt judicial processes. Slowly, the laughing stopped. The plotting slowed down. Rome began to realize a startling truth. The Invisible Man was not foolish. He was patient. But Claudius had one more secret. A mind sharpened by years of silence and observation. And a plan, a grand ambition that was so audacious, so unexpected, it would shock the entire empire and forever change the course of history. They mocked him. They underestimated him. They thought he would be a temporary mistake. But the Invisible Man did not fall. He learned, he adapted, he ruled, and now Rome would discover that the weakest-looking ruler can be the most dangerous to underestimate. What if Rome's most powerful emperor preferred books to swords? Claudius was not like the emperors before him. He wasn't a warrior king, celebrated for his conquests on the battlefield. No, he was a scholar, a historian, a linguist, a legal expert. While other future emperors were training with gladius and shield, Claudius was buried in scrolls, studying law, economics, and foreign cultures. This wasn't just an academic hobby. When he took the throne, he applied this knowledge directly. He didn't delegate justice. He personally reviewed court cases, often sitting for hours on end to hear them himself. He went after corrupt judges, punishing them severely. And in a revolutionary move, he allowed common citizens to speak directly to the throne, to present their grievances to the emperor. For the first time in generations, ordinary Romans felt seen, heard, and protected by their leader. The elites, the powerful senators and aristocrats, absolutely hated this. They saw their influence waning, their traditional powers slipping from their hands into the hands of a man they considered a fool. Claudius didn't just rule Rome. He rewired it. His reforms were deep, structural, and, to the old guard, dangerous. He granted Roman citizenship to people in the provinces, outsiders who had long been considered subjects, not equals. He appointed former slaves, men of talent and experience, to high offices in the imperial bureaucracy, valuing skill over noble birth. He opened up government jobs to talented commoners, creating a meritocracy that threatened the inherited privilege of the aristocracy. To the powerful families in Rome, this was unforgivable. They whispered in the dark corners of the Senate and in their luxurious villas, "He is destroying our traditions. He is lowering Rome." But for millions of people across the empire, from Gaul to Syria, he was building a fairer, more just society. And with every reform, he became more loved by the people and more hated by the powerful. No Roman emperor had dared to finish this war. Britain was a land of myth and fear to the Romans, mysterious, cold, and violent. Julius Caesar had tried and failed to conquer it. Other emperors had looked across the Channel and decided the prize wasn't worth the risk. But Claudius needed something big. He needed a victory to cement his legitimacy, to prove to the legions and the Senate that he was a true Roman emperor. So he chose the impossible. He ordered the invasion of Britain. The campaign started disastrously. Violent storms shattered transport ships. The troops, hearing tales of the fearsome British warriors, panicked and nearly mutinied. His generals hesitated. It looked like another failed attempt. So Claudius did something shocking, something almost no emperor ever did. He traveled to the battlefield himself. The scholar, the man who supposedly limped and stammered, appeared on foreign soil in the middle of a war zone. He only stayed for 16 days, but it was enough. His presence steadied the nerves of his soldiers and generals. Rome declared victory. Britain became a Roman province. The weak man was now a conqueror. His face was minted on new coins celebrating the victory. Statues of him rose across the empire. The man they once hid in the palace was now celebrated as a military genius. The empire finally respected him. But victory abroad often creates enemies at home. While Claudius was expanding the borders of the empire, conspiracies were growing in the heart of the capital. Senators who resented his power plotted quietly. Ambitious generals, fresh from their victories, dreamed of taking the throne for themselves. Poison became a common political tool in elite households. Claudius was a survivor. It's said he survived over a dozen assassination attempts during his reign. His world became a fortress. Food tasters were hired for every meal. His personal guard was doubled. Doors were always guarded. Sleep itself became a dangerous luxury. In the Roman court, every friendly smile could hide a dagger. Every flattering word could mask a deadly betrayal. The most dangerous enemy, however, wore a wedding ring. Her name was Agrippina. She was his final wife, his niece, and a woman of breathtaking ambition. She was brilliant, strategic, and utterly ruthless. Agrippina had a son from a previous marriage, a young man named Nero, and she was determined that he would rule, not Claudius's own son, Britannicus. She moved with masterful patience. Slowly she replaced loyal officials with her own people. She had her allies installed as commanders of key legions. She controlled who could see the emperor, isolating him from trusted advisors. Rome didn't notice the silent coup happening inside the palace. And Claudius, it seems, trusted her completely. History shows this single mistake would cost him everything. There was no sword, no battle, no warning. One night in the year 54 A.D., after dinner, Claudius fell violently ill. By morning, the emperor was dead. There was no official investigation, no trial for a potential assassin. Within hours, Agrippina, with the support of the Praetorian Guard she had courted, announced that her son Nero was the new emperor. The Senate, filled with men who either feared her or were allied with her, quickly confirmed it. Rome simply accepted the transition. The empire moved on. The man who had survived assassins, mutinies, and political plots for 13 years was ultimately defeated not by a sword, but by trust. They couldn't erase his rule, so they rewrote his image. The historians who wrote after his death, men like Suetonius and Tacitus, were part of the senatorial class that had despised him. They couldn't deny that he had conquered Britain or built massive public works. So instead, they mocked him. They focused relentlessly on his physical disabilities, his limp, and his supposed stutter. They ignored the significance of his legal reforms. They minimized his military conquests, giving the credit to his generals. They painted him as a foolish, bumbling puppet controlled by his wives and freedmen, because admitting the truth was too painful, too embarrassing for the Roman elite, that one of the most stable and prosperous periods of the early empire came from the very man they once hid behind curtains. Power hates to be proven wrong. And so history changed the story. So what is the real legacy of Claudius? He left behind an empire with expanded borders and a new wealthy province. He created fairer courts and a more accessible justice system. His massive infrastructure projects, like the port of Ostia and the aqueducts that still stand today, strengthened the empire's economy. He gave the empire a model of leadership that didn't rely on cruelty or terror. He ruled not by fear, but by understanding, not by violence, but by intelligence. Rome always remembered the charismatic conquerors and the ruthless tyrants. But the empire itself survived and thrived because of the steady, intelligent work of the forgotten man. They erased the ink, but not the truth. Claudius was never meant to rule, never meant to speak, never meant to be remembered. And yet, his fingerprints remain all over the story of Rome. If you want more stories buried beneath silence, subscribe, because the past isn't gone, it's just hidden.